Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you from Arsenal's training ground. Coaches there behind me, ready to take the squad off to Bournemouth later today. They've still got one more training session to go, and I'm here to talk in that building there to Mikel Arteta for his pre-match press conference. We're joining you afterwards to go over a few of the big sort of highlights to come from the presser. Obviously we're going to get team news, probably some stuff about transfers. We're under 2 weeks of the transfer window remaining, and just general feel of how Mikel and the squad have been in this past week. You imagine the mood is going to be very, very good after 2 opening wins. Arsenal trying to win their 3rd successive Premier League game from the start for the first time since 2004-2005 tomorrow. That's what is up for grabs for them. So yeah, I will be joining you after this presser just to talk about the main highlights that come from it. Speak to you soon.
Afternoon.
Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you from London Colney, the press conference room, sitting in Mikel Arteta's seat. Actually, his press conference is now over. I hope you can hear me pretty well because there's pretty noisy air conditioning units next to me, so apologies if you can't. Just wanted to come on and talk about some of the main highlights from today's press conference, some of the headlines. Mikel speaking ahead of the game against Bournemouth tomorrow. Talked about team news, talked about Bukayo Saka's contract, Marquinhos' future, a little bit on transfers, and so yeah, it's I thought I'd pop on quickly and talk about what he had to say. Arteta in pretty bullish mood, as you can imagine, after such a good start to the season, but he's very much, you get the tone from what he was saying, of keep the feet on the ground. We're not done anything yet, just 2 wins, got to keep it going, and that's the most important thing. And he certainly won't be taking Bournemouth very lightly. He spoke very glowingly about Bournemouth, in fact, and Scott Parker and the job that he has been doing there. In terms of team news ahead of the game on Saturday, very, very good, very positive. He says everybody's okay. As you saw, we had Cedric, Fabio Vieira and Emil playing with the under-21s. They look fit, they trained all week with us, and they are available for selection. So that's very good news for Arsenal. Certainly leaves with Arteta with a very strong squad to pick from if all of those players are going to be involved in the squad. I mean, Cedric will be anyway, he's fit. He just took the opportunity to play for the 21s because he wanted to get some minutes. But in terms of Fabio Vieira and Emil Smith-Rowe, having those 2 fit and available and in the squad is certainly going to improve Arteta's options off the bench. I can't imagine anyone's going to come straight into the starting 11 out of those lot, but having them on the bench just gives you more attacking options if you need to change the game in the second half. And having Vieira back fit is certainly a positive because you want your big summer signings to be involved at the start of the season, and we haven't had that from him yet. And he spoke a little bit more about Vieira. I asked him about how he played on the right hand side in that under-21s game and whether that's an area or a position that he really considered him for in the Premier League. And he's just spoke about the versatility that Vieira brings and the fact that he mentioned how well he linked up with Smith-Rowe, which he did in that game. It was you could sort of sense that. It wasn't a standout performance from Vieira, but certainly the link up he had and the understanding he had with Smith-Rowe was the biggest thing that you took away from that 45 minutes. And no surprise that Mikel Arteta spoke about that, but he also spoke about his versatility and how he can give him plenty of other options. That Arsenal have to try and find the best place for him right now, because he can play on the right, he can play on the left, he can play in the centre, he can even play as a false 9. So Arsenal need to try and find out exactly where he's going to play. They brought him in for his versatility, but you do want to sort of focus on one particular position at some point. You don't just want to be a utility man, and I'm sure Vieira wouldn't want to be that as well. But that's what he had to say about the team news. And I think the biggest headline, and you've probably seen it already, in fact, is what he was saying about Bukayo Saka's future and his new contract. And we know these talks have been ongoing for months now, and I thought it was very interesting what Mikel had to say. And maybe it's me reading a little bit too much into it, but Arteta is a very sensible, clever man. When he talks, when he says something in a press conference, he's thought about it beforehand. And he was asked about Bukayo's contract and how confident he was it was signed. This is what he had to say. He said, "I'm very confident that we as a club and Bukayo, his family, his agent, everybody, that we are very much aligned in what we want to achieve. And now it's about putting it on a piece of paper. I would like to get that done because I don't want that player or anybody distracted while we're in the middle of the season. These things take time and they have to go through the right process, and I think the process has been really good." Now, as I said, Arteta thinks very carefully about what he has to say, and if there's absolutely no news on something, he won't give any sort of hints, or he won't put anything out there that maybe raises expectation. The fact that he's spoken quite bullishly about this makes me suggest that he is confident that something's going to get done very sooner rather than later. And the fact that he said that, he said, I would like to get it done, again, maybe it's me reading a little bit much into it, but that could come back if nothing's done in sort of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. That could come back to bite Mikel, because you're then suddenly asking questions. Well, you wanted it done quickly. Why hasn't it been done quickly? Is there a problem? The fact he said that makes me think that that it could be pretty soon that we could hear something about Bukayo Saka's contract. Because I go back to when Orba was signing his new contract, and that's Mikel sort of about a month or two beforehand, or certainly a month beforehand, started speaking in this sort of bullish way about Orba's contract, that he knew something was happening, he knew it was going to get done. The fact that he's now chosen to speak like this about Bukayo certainly makes me feel a lot more confident than before when it comes to Bukayo Saka's contract, and hopefully that is something that will be done very, very soon. Okay, Marquinhos is an interesting one. I asked Mikel about him in the press conference, because he didn't play for the under-21s in midweek when Mikel was there, but they've got a game coming up this weekend that I expect he will feature in. He had played for the under-21s before, scored against Man United, played really well in that game. Mikel's had a good look at him. We know when he came in that the plan was to have a look at him during pre-season, and then make a decision whether to keep him or to send him out on loan. So I asked him about Marquinhos, how he settled, and will he be staying? And he confirmed that he would be staying, certainly for the first half of the season at least. This is what he had to say. He said, I'm very happy with him. He's adapted really well. He's a really likeable figure in the dressing room and around Colney, even if his language is not great yet. His physicality has been exceptional for someone who's coming from Brazil, a different way to train and the way he's doing it. I think he's got very good qualities for the way we want to play. We are going to keep him here for another few months to make sure he establishes himself at the club and in the team. And after that, we'll see what is best movement in terms of his development. Interesting, I thought, that on Marquinhos, and it makes sense to me. I don't really, if you're bringing him in, even if he's not going to play for the first team, which you have to think. I did ask after that, would you consider him for the Premier League, or were you looking at him more for Europa League? And he said, look, anyone who's available, if they impress in training, they'll be considered for any competition. But it just makes sense to me. If he's just come in, he's just settling in England, he's just adjusting to his new teammates, to his new surroundings, to suddenly send him out on loan straight away, it doesn't make too much sense, because it's just going to make it harder for him when he comes back to settle in. So to keep him here, even if you send him out in January, to keep him here for the next 6 months, let him start playing for the under-21s, maybe give him a run out in the Europa League or the Carabao Cup, and just let him get used to training and being around Arteta for one, but teammates as well. It makes perfect sense. And Premier League, you've got to think it's going to be a little bit too early for him, and Arsenal have got plenty of strength on the wing anyway, so I'm not sure he would really come in and make much of an impact when it comes to the Premier League. But in terms of the Europa League, it certainly feels like it's an opportunity to give him some minutes, in the Carabao Cup as well. And yeah, to me, makes sense that he's going to be staying for the next few months at the very least. He was asked about Nicolas Pepe, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Hector Bellerin. Didn't give too much away. So there was no news on Bellerin. Said Maitland-Niles' future is being sort of sorted out internally. In terms of Nicolas Pepe, who we know has been linked heavily with Nice recently in the last week, French media very much reporting that is something Nice are trying to potentially get done, although it is a complicated deal because of the money involved, the wages involved. When he was asked about Pepe, he said, what we can communicate, we always do when it's the right moment. We discussed that we have a big squad. We've made some decisions and allowed some players to leave. Until the end of the window, it's possible that anything can happen with any player. Again, interesting one that just, again, I read a lot into what Mikel says, because a lot of the time he says nothing. When you talk about transfers, he flat bats it away. He doesn't really talk about it. But the fact here he says we'll communicate when it's the right time. Again, my sort of Arteta radar makes me think maybe that talks are certainly taking place about Nicolas Pepe, and his future maybe in one way or another is going to be resolved pretty quickly. I think Pepe's future is definitely linked with whether Arsenal bring in another winger, or would potentially definitely be linked, although they did obviously try and get Rafinha in while Pepe was still here. But I think it'd be hard to bring in another winger if Pepe's still here, and if they can get him out, that's going to give them time to really push on and try and get someone in. He was speaking about transfers as well. He said, we're still in the same position. The market gives you a lot of information, something that maybe you expect you could do, you are not getting, or the same with ins and out. We are focusing on the players we have right now and want to get the best out of them. When he was asked about, you wouldn't just sign anyone, it has to be the right player. He says, it has to be the right person and it has to be the right player. We only want to bring top quality through the door. If not, it's not worth it. And I've spoken about this before. I think Arsenal's squad's pretty good right now. It's in a good position. Yes, it'd be nice to have one more winger, perhaps, or one more central midfielder. I think a winger is more important than a central midfielder, if I'm being honest. But I don't think it'd be a disaster if Arsenal don't sign anyone in the next 2 weeks or so. I think they'll certainly try. And if they do sign someone, then absolutely it'll be better than not, because it's going to give you another important member of the squad, you would hope. But I don't think it'd be a disaster if they don't sign anyone. I think they've got enough in this squad to have a good first half of the season and maybe assess things again in January. But that's what you have to say about transfers. Okay, before I go, just looking ahead to that Bournemouth game on Saturday and a potential 11 for that one, my predicted 11. First time I've done this season. Obviously, I'm very much excited to be heading up to Bournemouth on Saturday to see my first game of the season. Predicted 11. I think we're going to see the same 11. Like I said in yesterday's video, personally for me, if he's fully fit and he's deemed fully fit, I'd bring in Tomiyasu for White. But my predicted 11, what I think Arteta's going to do, I think he'll stick with the same side. So it'll be Ramsdale in goal, obviously, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, then the midfield of Partey, Xhaka and Odegaard, and then the front three at the moment picks itself. You're not going to change that, are you, unless there's any injuries that we don't know about? So that'd be Saka, Gabriel Jesus and Gabriel Martinelli. It's a strong side. We've seen it's played well. It's certainly attacking wise. In that game last weekend against Leicester, it all clicked and looked fantastic. Didn't quite click as well as that against Crystal Palace, but Arsenal showed another side to their game in that Palace game when got themselves the lead, and then they showed a lot of backbone, I thought, to get through that difficult period that Palace gave them in the second half. And it'll be interesting to see exactly what Arsenal we see turn up against Bournemouth. If they do win, it'll be the first time since 2004 and 2005 they've started the season with 3 successive Premier League wins. 16 years since they've done that. That's the opportunity they have in front of them tomorrow. It'd be fantastic to see them sitting there with 9 points from 3 games, and just stark contrast to what we saw last season when they started with 3 defeats in a row and obviously went into that first international break bottom of the table without scoring a goal, in absolute crisis. And it'd be pretty remarkable if they start this season with the completely opposite way with 3 wins out of 3. And you've got to say they've got a very good opportunity to do that. No one will be taking Bournemouth lightly. Mikel made that very clear in this press conference, but he will know that if his side perform certainly the way they played against Leicester going forward last weekend, then they have a hell of a chance of winning on Saturday and going into the next game with 3 wins from 3. Right, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate your time. As always, like I said, I will be at the game tomorrow, so keep your eyes peeled for all the updates as Arsenal hopefully continue this impressive start to the season.